everyone, my name is Tori, this is Novel Life, and welcome back to my channel. Today I have the mid-year book freakout tag. This is something that basically every single book creator on YouTube does every single year, and I almost forgot about this tag. I do have most of the books I'm going to talk about. Honestly, I do have them on my shelves, but I really don't want to get them down and hold them up. That's just me being lazy. So we're just going to jump right into the questions. There's 13 or 14 questions. The original creator of this tag, I do not know the person who created it, but this is going to be the romance edition because I have only read romances this year. So the first one is the best book you've read this year. I have read over 100 books so far this year. My goal is 300. I think I'm at like 120 something. Yeah, I think I'm at 120 something. So almost halfway there. I'm a little bit behind, but it's fine. I will say that Keeping 13 and Redeeming 6 by Chloe Walsh are two of my favorite books of the year. I mean, all four books in the Boys of Tommen series that are out already are my favorites, but the second book in each couple's duet is my favorite. It's just such a amazing conclusion to both of their stories. So Keeping 13 is the ending of Johnny and Shannon's story. It's not the ending, but that is their happily ever after technically. I mean, you do see them in other books, but that's their happily ever after. I love Johnny and Shannon, and I thought, oh, Chloe Walsh, you can't top Johnny and Shannon. Nope. She said, hold my drink. And she came out with Saving 6 and Redeeming 6, and that is Joey and Aoife's story. And let me tell you, they go on the wildest ride, okay? When I tell you wildest, I literally mean wildest. Joey and Aoife, protect them at all cost. I love Joey Lynch so much. The things he goes through in the second book and his character development and his character journey is just something that I absolutely loved and I connected with, and I don't know why, but that Boys of Tommen series, you've probably seen it on TikTok or on YouTube or on BookTube, and let me just tell you, it deserves the hype. It is so good. It is such an enjoyable read. I want to reread those books before the end of the year for sure, just because I feel like I read them like months ago, and I did, and I'm like missing that emotional connection I have to those characters. Question number 2 is best sequel you've read so far this year. So I would have to say The Right Move by Liz Humford. That was, I mean, it's hard with sequels because I don't read a lot of series that kind of like follows the same couple. Also, there's not that many out, I feel like, but The Right Move by Liz Humford because I love Ryan and Indy. I love their story. I loved the pacing, I loved the writing, I loved the character development, I loved the romance development, I loved all of it. It's a forced proximity romance. Our female character, she finds her ex cheating on her, breaks up, she moves out, she moves into Ryan's apartment. Ryan is Stevie's brother. So yeah, it was just a really good time, really sweet romance, a very different pace from Mile High. And I will say another best sequel that I've read so far this year is Reckless by Elsie Silver. Heartless was one of my favorite books of last year. Powerless came out at the beginning of this year, and while I did love Powerless, for some reason Reckless was just a wild ride, and Theo Silva is just another type of hero. He is the complete opposite of Cade. While Cade is very grumpy, Theo is very sunshiny, but they are both possessive in like completely different ways. So it's very hard to even compare them because they're literally two different types of people. And I loved it. I also loved Winter's redemption story. I think she had a beautiful redemption story, and I loved her growth, everything that she has been through. That was a 5-star read. Loved it. Loved it. Loved it. Loved it. Okay. Question number 3 is a new release you haven't read but want to. So this is hard because I try really, really hard to keep up with new releases. So there's Power by Cassandra Robbins. I definitely want to read that one. That one I heard is like a spicy good time. There is the new Ali Hazelwood book that I want to read, Love Theoretically. I think Love Theoretically just came out in the middle of June. So that's definitely like a new release that's come out that like I just haven't got to yet. I do have Libro FM, which that's where I get a lot of like my early books from. I will say that I have Mountains Made of Glass downloaded by Scarlett St. Clair. I don't know if that is a YA book, but I have the audiobook for that one I'm interested in. There's not too many releases that's come out that I'm like, oh, I'm dying to read. I need to read them. You know what I mean? I'm pretty good with keeping up with new releases, so I'm not like too mad about that. That's all the ones I can think of. I'm probably missing some, but that's all the ones I have written down. Question number 4 is most anticipated release for the second half of the year. So Glimmers of You by Catherine Cowles, only because this female character has diabetes. So I always love when Catherine Cowles does a chronic illness or disability rep in her books, because I can trust her that even if she doesn't have that chronic illness or disability, she's going to go out there and she is going to research it and she's going to do really, really well with. One Last Shot by Nikki Castle. You guys know Nikki Castle's #1 fangirl. I absolutely love and adore her as a person, and I love and adore her writing. One Last Shot is Kane and Isabella's story, which is an MMA tattooed bad boy fighter, and then Isabella, who is a ballerina, which is like total opposite ends of the spectrum, and they meet together and they have a romance, and I'm ready for it. I'm so freaking ready for it. Another book I'm really excited for is Rebecca Yarros's, I think it's Iron Flame. It is the sequel to Fourth Wing, because that freaking ending got me. Fourth Wing is another, like, up there for best books of the year for me. It's going to be on my top list of the year for sure, but that book is perfection in my eyes. I love Fourth Wing, so I cannot wait to see Xaden again. I think they're saying his name. Anyway, Xaden in book 2, and Violet in Violence and the Dragons, and I'm just, I love that world. I love the world that she created, but those are just some of the ones I'm super, super excited about. Question number 5 is the biggest disappointment. So I have a couple to talk about. The first one is The Coldest Winter by Brittany Cherry. So I am a fan of Brittany Cherry's backlist. I'm making my way through her backlist, and literally every single book that I've read by her that was published before 2022, loved and adored. For some reason, the pacing of this book felt really off. We read it for Cover to Cover Book Club, so we had a really good discussion about it. Some people loved it. I personally felt like there were some aspects of this book that was kind of thrown in there that didn't need to be in there. It kind of just was thrown in there as like a wow factor, and for me, that was like triggering. I was like, nope, hardcore, hate that. So it was very disappointing to me. Another one was I'll Always Be With You by Monica Murphy. So Monica Murphy is hit or miss for some people. I loved A Million Kisses in Your Lifetime. That was one of my favorite books of last year. I just love their story, and I love being back at Lancaster Prep. But this book, the pacing also felt really off. It was like she put 2 books together. It's like she wrote the first half of the book and she wrote the last half of the book, and she tried to like merge it together with like a time jump, and it didn't really work for me. It felt like 2 separate books and 2 separate characters, and I don't know, it just didn't really make sense. The pacing of the first part of the book was definitely off for me, and I was not enjoying it, so that was definitely a disappointment for me. But yeah, those were just some that I was like, no. That was a disappointment. Big, big disappointment. Question number 6 is biggest surprise. So I always love when I pick up a book and I'm like, oh shit, this book really took me by surprise, and I really, really loved it. One of those is Final Offer by Lauren Asher. And the reason why I say Final Offer is a surprise to me because for some reason, her Dreamland Billionaire series has not been my personal favorite. I ride or die for her Formula One series. I think the last 2 books in the Formula One series are perfection in my eyes. Those were like 2 of my favorite books of last year as well. So when I went into, I read the second book, which was Declan's Story, and I enjoyed it. It was a solid read. First book was one of my biggest disappointments of last year. The fine print was one of my biggest disappointments. So I was like iffy on if I was going to love the last book in the series. The length of the book definitely kind of like scared me a little bit, but I really actually enjoyed that story. It had really good development and character growth, and I was really surprised by it. So that was one that I was like, wow, this is like a 4.5 star read. I was definitely not expecting to like it as much as I did. Now, another book that really took me by surprise was Right Man, Right Time by Megan Quinn. I've said this countless times on my channel, on my Instagram. Megan Quinn usually is not for me. I do not like her humor, her rom-com-y humor, just hasn't worked for me in the past. But I heard QB Tyler talking about this book on Instagram and how it's age gap. He has piercings and, you know, he's a professional hockey player. He's super grumpy. She's in college still, and they have this fake dating aspect. He goes to her dorm room. There's, you know, sauna stuff that happens. And I was like, this sounds right up my alley. Like maybe Megan Quinn is writing new things and it's more my taste now. I had the best time reading this book. It was a 5-star read. I had the best time. The narration for the audiobook was basically perfection in my eyes. I adored everything about it. I loved the hero. I loved the female character. I even did not care about the third act breakup, which I usually hate. I did not even care about that. Did not even care. I loved it. Another surprise was My Dark Romeo, and that was only because that book was bananas and I wasn't expecting to like it. My Dark Romeo is by Parker S. Huntington and LJ Shen. I have not read an LJ Shin book in quite a while, so I was definitely surprised I even enjoyed that, but I think it's more of I enjoyed Parker S. Huntington's writing with some of LJ Shin's kind of like crazy bananas plots and sex scenes, if that makes sense. So yeah, those were definitely some biggest surprises for me because I was not expecting to like those. Question number 7 is new favorite author, either a debut or a new to you author. So Chloe Walsh, new to me author, read her at the beginning of the year, fell in love with her books, fell in love with her writing, and now I want to read everything that she's ever written. I'm so happy she got picked up by a publisher and The Boys of Toman is being traditionally published. I'm not mad about it. She deserves it. Those books, I want them in more people's hands because everyone needs to read their stories. C.E. Ricky, I read Iced Out at the beginning of the year. That's a spicier MM romance, but she does have a more emotional and angsty MM romance called Follow the River. It's a first book in a duet. Love that one. I'm currently in the middle of Don't You Dare, which is more towards the spicy side of her MM romances, but I personally am enjoying them. Also, Ellie Cotton. I read Break the Ice this year for the first time. That was my first Ellie Cotton book. Loved it. Hockey, college romance. Loved it. The narration is A+. Tal Bauer. Okay, this dude can write the most emotional romances, but the emotions are like outside things that make you cry or the emotions that the characters feel for each other. Like I've read one book by him. I read Gravity and I'm obsessed and I'm dying to pick up more. I have 3 books downloaded on my Kindle app. I'm just ready to dive into more, but I just have to like work myself up because I do know they're very emotional. And I think he just had a new release. So that goes back to one of those questions, like a new release that you want to read but haven't. That one. It just came out in the middle of June and I need to read it. Like I really do need to read it. I've heard great things. Question number 8 is newest fictional crush. So Xaden from Fourth Wing. I mean, duh. I feel like Xaden is on people's list of daddies now because he is just up there for the fantasy romance dudes. Theo still from Reckless because his mouth is something else, but the way he treats Winter got me. It just got me. And Rain from Serpent and the Wings of Night. That was a really good fantasy romance. I would highly recommend. I like the way he handled our female character because she is very strong and she is very independent and she does not need a man to help her at all. And he understands that. And I love that he kind of like took a back seat and was like, okay, yeah, you can do your own thing. Love that. Question number 9 is newest to favorite character. So this can be like female, males, whatever. I'm going to say Violet from Fourth Wing. Because of the chronic illness that she deals with in that book, I was taken by surprise because I didn't know it had chronic illness rep in there. Like I just didn't look it up before I started reading it. So because I do have a chronic illness, that's not the same, but I do, it's similar things. Anyone with a chronic illness, you experience kind of like the same emotions surrounding a lot of it. And I just personally connected to her. So she's another character that I just absolutely adore and I will protect her at all cost, okay? Like Xaden is amazing, but she is something else. I love her. Mafi from Damaged Like Us by Becca and Krista Ritchie. Love him. Absolutely adore him. He's also the oldest of like 5 kids or something like that. And he's the oldest of all of his like 15 cousins. So he has this like oldest kid mentality, which I'm also the oldest child. So I have this like protectiveness for my younger brother and stuff like that. I just connected with him. And Joey Lynch. Joey Lynch is someone that a lot of people have certain characters in certain books that they just cannot hear negative things on. And if I do, I just skip over it. This character, Joey Lynch, and his books, his books and his character, I just can never hear anything negative because I related to him so much, and especially Redeeming 6, that it's too personal for me. And if you are critiquing him, I feel like you're critiquing me as well. So yeah, I can't hear anything bad about him. Okay. Question number 10 is book that made you cry. Redeeming 6. I cried a lot in that book. It's a thick book. It's almost 1,000 pages. And I cried a lot, multiple times, just because, like I said, he is so relatable in what he goes through. I feel like I've been there, done that. And I just relate to him on a personal level with everything that he's going through. And I absolutely adore him. So yeah, he holds my heart. I also did cry in Reckless, which Reckless is a secret and surprise baby, which I absolutely hate. I hate surprise baby. But I cried in this book at 30%. Theo finds out something. I mean, not that it's a spoiler, but he finds out something and the way that he reacts just got me and I started crying. I don't know what it was, but that's how it. So yeah. Question number 11. This one was a cool question. It said books that made you happy. So I have read 2 books in Jiffy Kate's New Orleans Reveler series, which is a baseball romance series. I had the best times reading those two books, especially The Setup and The Substitute. That one is so freaking fun. It is such a sweet romance. It is so adorable. It's like a hug. Like you're in New Orleans, you get the feel of New Orleans, you get the vibes. The characters are adorable. He's a single dad in that one. He has these two kids that our female character starts, nannying for, and they just have this really sweet connection and their romance grows. It was just a sweet book, and it just made me so happy to read a romance like that. Also, Happy Place. And I mean, not because happy's in the title and not because they all go to this happy place where they all go on vacation, but because you have this romance between these two characters that have fallen apart. They're not together anymore. They were engaged and they're not together anymore, and that's very hard. But it made me happy to see that they can find their way back to each other, and that sometimes some things happen outside of a relationship that causes people to drift apart, and sometimes they just can't figure it out and stay together, and that's what happened. And I love just seeing them come back together, so that was really cool. But question number 12 is the most beautiful book you've acquired this year. It's Fourth Wing. I have Fourth Wing all the way at the top of my shelf. I love the sprayed edges. I love it. Also, my two Mystic boxes as special editions of When Heroes Fall and When Villains Rise. Some people do not like those books. I absolutely love those two books. So those are two editions that I've acquired that I absolutely love. Now, question number 13 is, what books do you need to read before the end of the year? And I hate this question. I need to read all the books. I literally just posted on my Instagram the other day that I'm scared I'm going to die before I read all the books on my TBR. Like, I want to experience all of the stories and all of the love stories and all the romances and all of that stuff. And I'm terrified that I'm going to die before I read all the books. Like, I don't want to miss out on anything. So I definitely want to read all of them. Like, literally, I want to read all of them. But those were all the questions for the mid-year freakout tag or book freakout tag. For the emoji, drop me a book stack because I've talked about a lot of books in this video. But thank you so much for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe for more content from me. As always, I hope you're living a novel life, and I will see you in my next one. Bye, guys.